From the day I was born, I lived in the shadow of the girl next door. I was 5 when I first met Isabella Vance. The sun was bright that day, the kind of afternoon that promises endless summers. Mom held my hand as we walked through our new subdivision, pointing to the beautiful colonial-style house across the street. "That's Mrs. Vance's house," she said. "She has a daughter named Isabella. You two are going to be great friends." At the time, I had no idea that Isabella Vance would become the inescapable shadow of my life. She was 2 years older than me, and our first meeting left a permanent mark. She stood in her perfectly manicured garden, a little princess in a delicate white sundress, her hair pulled back in a high, perfect ponytail. Her mother told her to play with me. Isabella looked me up and down, a cool appraisal in her eyes, and then she reached out and pinched my cheek. Hard. Ow! I yelped, tears welling up. "You're cute," she said, her lips curving into a smile, but her eyes held a glint of something I couldn't understand. From that day on, under the guise of looking out for her little brother, Isabella inserted herself into every corner of my life. At first, it was just little pranks like putting a beetle in my backpack or accidentally tripping me on the sidewalk. I thought it was just kids being kids until elementary school, when things took a darker turn. On the first day of first grade, I made a friend named Kevin. We hit it off immediately. The next day, during recess, I saw Isabella pull Kevin aside on the playground. They talked for a few minutes, and after that, Kevin wouldn't look at me. "Why won't Kevin play with me anymore?" I asked her on the walk home, my voice thick with hurt. "I told him you steal other kids' lunch money," she said, not even bothering to look at me. "I do not." I cried, my face burning. Isabella stopped and turned, her gaze sharp. "If you tell any grown-ups, I'll just say you're a liar." She reached out and tipped my chin up with her fingers. "Got it." Terrified, I nodded. That was the first time I understood how truly frightening she could be. It became a pattern. Anytime I got close to someone, Isabella would find a way to destroy it. In second grade, I had a crush on a girl named Emily and left a dandelion on her desk. The next day, Emily's favorite book was torn to shreds, and she transferred schools a week later, crying. "Was that you?" I asked Isabella, my voice trembling. She was doing her homework and didn't even look up. "What do you think?" I worked up the courage to tell my mom that Isabella was bullying me. Mom just laughed. "Oh, Leo, that just means she likes you. She thinks of you as a real brother. A little roughhousing is normal." "It's not normal," I screamed in my head. But no one was listening. Isabella got perfect grades. She was the model student in every teacher's eyes. At every parent-teacher conference, my mom would sigh and say, "If only you could be more like Isabella." It only made me hate her more. When I was 10, I finally decided to fight back. I snuck in her yard and hid her favorite American Girl doll. Watching her search frantically brought a twisted sense of satisfaction. That night, she knocked on our door. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Give her back," she said, her voice low. I played dumb. "Give what back?" She suddenly grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't play games with me. I know it was you." I winced in pain and led her to the backyard, pulling the doll from a hollow in the old oak tree. As she took it, her tears vanished, replaced by a chilling smile. "You really think you can win against me?" The next day, every single one of my action figures was gone. I saw Isabella watching me from her bedroom window, a triumphant smirk on her face. As we got older, her pranks became more sophisticated. In middle school, she was elected student council president, and I became her personal errand boy. She made me do her homework, fetch her coffee, and even cover her detention. If I refused, a new vicious rumor about me would be circulating by morning. "Why do you do this to me?" I finally asked her one day, cornering her in the library. Isabella tilted her head, pretending to think. "Because it's fun," she said, reaching out to straighten my collar. "And you're so cute when you're angry." In high school, Isabella blossomed. She was beautiful, popular, and had a line of guys asking her out. But she never seemed interested in dating, preferring to focus her energy on tormenting me. She'd pop up on my walk home and snatch my backpack, accidentally spill her lunch tray on me in the cafeteria, or convince the entire P.E. class to shun me during kickball. The worst part was, everyone else thought she was an angel. Teachers adored her, parents praised her, and students worshipped her. I was the only one who knew the monster behind the mask. Senior year, I finally saw my escape. College. I could go to school on the other side of the country, a place where no one knew the name Isabella Vance. I secretly changed my top choice application to a university 3,000 miles away. The day I got my acceptance letter, I was so excited I couldn't sleep. "You're going that far away?" Isabella's face was dark when she found out. I wanted to go to a better program," I stammered. She stared at me for a long, silent moment, then a slow smile spread across her face. "Fine. Do what you want. I thought I was finally free. Until move-in day. As I stood in front of my new dorm, I saw a familiar figure standing under a sycamore tree. Isabella, wearing a white sundress just like the day we first met, smiled at me. "Surprise," she said. I transferred. In that moment, my world collapsed. I had never stood a chance. She had planned it all, even pulling strings to get assigned to the dorm building right next to mine. "Did you really think you could get away from me?" she asked later that night, after dragging me to a hotel room just off campus. Her voice was cold. "Don't even think about it. Not in this lifetime." Staring at her face, so close to mine, I was struck by a terrifying realization. Isabella's obsession with me had long ago twisted into something far beyond a childhood game, and I might never, ever escape. In elementary school, she turned the whole class against me. On the first day, I walked into the classroom clutching my new backpack, my stomach in knots. Mom had bought me a Superman pencil case, telling me it would help me make friends. I held it tight, hoping to find someone as heroic as the Man of Steel. I just found my seat when a hush fell over the room. Isabella Vance, already looking older and more confident in her crisp school uniform, strode in with a group of older girls. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me, a sly smile playing on her lips. "See him," she said to the other girls, pointing at me. "That's my little brother. Make sure you guys look after him." The way she said "look after" sent a chill down my spine. Sure enough, during the first recess, the older girls surrounded me. The tallest one, a girl with a severe ponytail, snatched my Superman pencil case. "You actually brought this baby stuff to school?" she sneered. I reached for it, but another girl shoved me to the ground. Laughter erupted around me. Through a blur of tears, I saw Isabella standing at the edge of the crowd, a look of serene satisfaction on her face. On the walk home, someone threw my backpack into a muddy ditch. As I knelt there, staring at my soaked textbooks, the tears finally came. I didn't know how long I knelt there before I felt a presence behind me. "What are you crying about?" Isabella asked, looking down at me. "It's only the first day." The next day, no one would talk to me. During morning announcements, the seat next to me was empty. At lunch, no one would share a table. When the teacher called on students, everyone's eyes avoided mine. Why is everyone ignoring me? I finally worked up the courage to ask a boy who seemed nicer than the others. He glanced around nervously before whispering, "Isabella told everyone you have some kind of weird disease. She said to stay away from you." The words hit me like a physical blow. So this was her idea of looking after me. This went on for a whole month. I was a ghost in my own classroom, navigating the days in total isolation. Then, a new student named Daniel transferred in. He was a cheerful kid who didn't know the rules, and he struck up a conversation with me. We became fast friends, kicking a soccer ball around at recess and walking home together. For a few glorious days, I felt normal. But it didn't last. One afternoon, I saw Isabella talking to Daniel by the bike racks behind the school. I crept closer, hiding behind a large oak tree. "Stay away from him." Isabella's voice was as cold as ice. "You'll regret it if you don't." Daniel stood his ground. "Why?" "He's my friend." Isabella laughed, a sound that made my blood run cold. She pulled out her phone and played something. I couldn't hear what it was, but I saw the color drain from Daniel's face. "Understand now?" Isabella said, pocketing her phone. "Starting tomorrow, I don't want to see you two together." The next day, Daniel looked at me with pure terror in his eyes. He found me during recess, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry, Leo. I can't be your friend anymore." "Why?" I grabbed his arm. "What did she say to you?" He pulled away. "Please don't ask. I don't want to have to move again." Watching him hurry away, my hands curled into fists. That afternoon, for the first time, I sought her out. I found her in the library, and she looked up from her book with a triumphant smile. "Are you happy now?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Why do you have to do this?" Isabella closed her book. "Because you're mine," she said matter-of-factly. She reached out to pat my head, but I flinched away. "And you need to remember that in this school, no one gets to be your friend without my permission." I ran from the library, tears blurring my vision. In that moment, I understood. In Isabella's world, I wasn't a person. I was a possession, a toy. When I got home, I threw myself into my mom's arms and sobbed, telling her everything. But she just smiled. "Oh, sweetie, Isabella just likes you so much she's afraid you'll make bad friends. You have to understand a big sister's heart." I looked up at my mother and realized a devastating truth. No one in the world was going to save me from Isabella. I was on my own. That night, I had a nightmare. Isabella was a giant spider, wrapping me in silky threads until I couldn't move or breathe. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I woke up with my pillow soaked in sweat. Outside, the moon cast a cold light on my bedroom floor. I looked across the lawn to her house, where a light was on in her window, and for the first time, I thought about running away. But I was only 7. Where could I possibly go? I was terrified of her, but there was no escaping her. The winter of 4th grade was brutally cold. Every morning, I had to walk to school alone, the wind biting at my ears. Isabella was in middle school now, but her influence still hung over me like a storm cloud. One morning, my favorite scarf was missing. It was a blue wool scarf my mom had knitted for me, one of the few things that brought me any comfort. After a frantic search, I gave up and left for school, my neck exposed to the freezing air. I saw her as soon as I reached the end of our block. Isabella, in her middle school uniform, with my blue scarf wrapped snugly around her neck. As I got closer, she theatrically buried her nose in it and took a deep sniff. "Give it back. I'll lunge for it." She dodged me easily, holding the scarf high above her head. "You want it? Beg me." The wind was relentless, and my ears ached. Tears pricked my eyes, but I bit my lip and refused to speak. After a moment, she seemed to get bored. With a smirk, she threw the scarf on the wet, dirty pavement and ground it under her heel. "You can have it back now," she said, smiling. I knelt and picked up the muddy scarf, my hands trembling. She loomed over me, then reached down and pinched my chin. "Remember, Leo, what's yours is mine." That afternoon, I secretly washed the scarf, hiding it from my mom. That night, I cried silently into my pillow, unable to comprehend the sheer pointlessness of her cruelty. The next day, I found a note on my desk. "Meet me behind the gym after school. Isabella." My stomach clenched. The area behind the gym was a blind spot. No security cameras, no teachers. It was where she'd threatened Daniel. I spent the rest of the day in a fog of dread. When the final bell rang, my legs felt like lead. She was alone, standing in the corner of the empty blacktop. When she saw me, she waved me over. "Come here." I shuffled toward her and saw she was holding a small, elegantly wrapped box. "For you," she said, holding it out. "Happy birthday." I froze. It was my birthday, but I hadn't thought she'd remember, let alone get me a gift. The box was light. I hesitated. "What? You think I put a spider in it?" she scoffed. "Relax. It's a real present this time." I carefully opened the box. Inside was a brand new red scarf, thicker and softer than my old one. "Why? Why would you give me this?" I asked, suspicious. Her expression softened. "About yesterday. I went too far." She reached out to touch my hair, and this time I didn't pull away. "I really do think of you as my little brother." I clutched the scarf, torn. Could she mean it? Just then, a group of her middle school friends walked by, laughing. They spotted us and started catcalling. "Hey, Isabella, is it your little pet project?" Isabella's face changed in an instant. She snatched the red scarf from my hands. "Who said this was for him?" she said with a cold laugh. "I just had him hold it for me." She wrapped the scarf around her own neck and sauntered over to her friends, shooting a warning glance back at me as she left. I stood there, feeling colder than I had the day before. The gift had been just another game. When I got home, my mom was in the kitchen frosting a birthday cake. "Isabella dropped off a gift for you earlier," she said happily. On the dining room table was another beautifully wrapped present. I opened it hesitantly. Inside was a hardcover copy of The Little Prince. On the inside cover, in her perfect cursive, she had written, "For the most important person in my life, Isabella." I was completely bewildered. Who was the real Isabella? The demon who tormented me at school, or the sweet girl who gave me thoughtful gifts? That night, she and her mom came over for cake. Isabella played the part of the perfect neighbor, serving me a slice and wiping a smudge of frosting from my cheek. Our parents beamed, remarking on how close we were. When no one was looking, she leaned in close. "Take good care of that book," she whispered in my ear. "If you damage it, you'll pay." I stiffened. Of course. In front of the adults, she was the doting older sister. In private, I was still just her toy. This double life continued through all of elementary school. At school, I was the weird, isolated kid. At home, I was the sweet boy who got along so well with Isabella. No one knew the truth, and no one would have believed me if I told them. On the last day of 6th grade, I worked up the courage to tell my homeroom teacher everything Isabella had done to me over the years. He listened patiently, then sighed. "Leo, Isabella has always been an exceptional student. Are you sure you're not just misunderstanding her intentions?" I walked out of his office in despair. In everyone's eyes, Isabella was perfect, and I was just a problem child who liked to make up stories. That night, I made a resolution. In middle school, I would get away from her. We were going to the same campus, but the middle and high schools were in separate buildings. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally get a little freedom. But fate, it seemed, had a sick sense of humor. On the first day of 7th grade, I saw a familiar name on the student leadership board. Isabella had been selected as a peer mentor for the incoming 7th graders. When I walked into my homeroom, she was already there, standing at the front of the class. Her eyes found mine. and she gave me a radiant smile. "You, right there," she said, pointing to the desk in the front row. "As your mentor, I'll be taking special care of you." The other kids looked at me with envy, thinking I'd won the lottery. Only I understood what she really meant. My middle school years were destined to be lived in her shadow, too. The year I took my SATs, I finally saw my chance to escape. High school was 3 years of slow-motion torture. Isabella was student council president, and I was her most convenient lackey. Every day after school, I had to report to her office to file papers, run her errands, and sometimes even write her essays. If I dared to refuse, trouble would find me the next day. "The physics lab report is due Monday. You'll write it for me," she said one winter afternoon during her junior year, tossing a stack of notes onto my desk. "I can't," I said, my courage a small, flickering flame. "Midterms are next week. I have to study." Isabella narrowed her eyes and leaned in close. "What did you just say?" I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "I said I have to study." She suddenly smiled, a chilling, predatory expression. Without another word, she turned and left. The next day, my locker was pried open. All my textbooks and notebooks were gone. Worse, someone had spray-painted my name on the wall of the boys' bathroom with a string of obscene slurs next to it. "I heard he's a total creep. Explains why he's always alone. He's disgusting." The whispers follow me down the halls like a swarm of angry bees. I knew it was Isabella's work, but I had no proof. On the first day of senior year, she called me up to the roof. Dressed in her school uniform, her long hair blowing in the wind, she looked like a painting. But I knew the canvas was hiding a twisted soul. "Decided where you're applying to college yet?" she asked casually. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the one thing I couldn't let myself think about. The possibility of being free. Not yet." Isabella laughed softly. "I've already decided. I'm going to Columbia. You should apply to NYU. That way, I can still look after you." Look after you. The words felt like a prison sentence. I stared at the distant skyline and realized this was my last chance. If I didn't get away now, I never would. That night, I locked my bedroom door and spent hours scouring university websites from all over the country. New York was out. I needed somewhere far away. My grades were excellent. Despite Isabella stealing most of my time, I'd stayed up late every night studying, keeping myself in the top 10% of our class. It was my only advantage. After days of research, I settled on a university in California. UCLA. The climate was warm, it was 3,000 miles away, and most importantly, Isabella hated the West Coast. She'd once said it was full of phonies and she'd never lived there. The day I submitted my applications, my hand was shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. I listed UCLA as my early decision choice, clicked submit, and shut my laptop, my heart pounding. "Did you finish your applications?" my mom asked at dinner. "All done," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll let you know when I hear back." She didn't press. She probably assumed I'd follow Isabella to New York, just as I've followed her for the last 12 years. Waiting for the acceptance letter was agony. Every time I saw Isabella, I was terrified she'd see right through me. But she seemed supremely confident I'd trail after her, even starting to plan our college lives. "I've already found a great 2-bedroom near campus," she told me one day. "You can have the smaller room." I nodded, a wave of nausea rolling through me, and prayed UCLA would accept me. In mid-December, the email arrived. I was home alone when my phone buzzed with a notification. When I saw the subject line, "Congratulations from UCLA," I almost burst into tears. I'd done it. "Why didn't you tell me you applied to a school in Los Angeles?" My mom's voice trembled when she found out later that night. My heart sank. Isabella knew. With her personality, she would never let this go. That night, my phone blew up. Over 20 missed calls from Isabella. I ignored them all. Finally, a text came through. "You really think you can get away?" I turned off my phone and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The next day was the deadline to accept the offer. Isabella would be waiting for me. I had to get out before she could do anything. At 4 in the morning, I slipped out of the house, leaving a note saying I was staying with a friend. I went straight to the train station and bought a one-way ticket to my aunt's house in Philadelphia. I'd lay low there, then fly to right before orientation. As the train pulled away from the station, I watched my hometown disappear into the dawn, and for the first time in my life, I tasted freedom. The joy lasted for 3 days. On the third night at my aunt's, the doorbell rang. My aunt went to answer it, and I heard her surprised voice. "Isabella, what are you doing here?" My blood ran cold. How did she find me? Before I could react, my bedroom door flew open. Isabella stood there, her face pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her gaze locked onto mine, the look of a predator cornering its prey. "We're going back," she said, her voice raw. "Now." My aunt looked between us, confused. What's going on? Isabella forced a smile. His mom was worried sick, Aunt Carol. She asked me to come get him. It was a lie, but I couldn't expose her. Under my aunt's concerned gaze, I had no choice but to pack my bag and leave with her. The second we were outside, she grabbed my wrist and dragged me toward her car, her grip like iron. Let go of me. I struggled. She spun around and slammed me against the side of the car. Her eyes burned with a fury I'd never seen before. You thought changing your application behind my back would be enough to get rid of me? She leaned in, her voice a low growl. Well, I have good news for you. I deferred my admission to Columbia. I'll be starting at UCLA with you in the fall. Surprise. I stared at her, my mind reeling. She'd given up an Ivy League school just to follow me. Why? My voice shook. Why won't you just leave me alone? Her expression shifted, becoming something unreadable and complex. She let me go and got in the car. Get in. On the long drive back, she was silent. It wasn't until we were on the highway that she finally spoke, her voice quiet but absolute. Because you're mine, she said. You have been since you were 5. I looked out the window at the blurred landscape, and a horrifying truth settled over me. No matter where I ran, she would follow. For the rest of my life, there would be no escape. But when Isabella found out, she flew straight to my school. The Los Angeles summer was a thick, humid blanket. I dragged my suitcase to the dorm, my shirt already soaked with sweat. Isabella stood beside me, chatting amiably with the RA. I'm his sister, she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. It's his first time this far from home, so please keep an eye on him. The RA nodded enthusiastically, completely charmed. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. It was always the same. In front of adults, she was perfect. I'll walk you to your room, she said, her tone shifting to a command the moment the RA was out of earshot. I can manage, I said, taking a step back. Isabella's eyes narrowed, a familiar danger sign. But this time I held her gaze. We weren't in our hometown anymore. Here, she was a stranger. I didn't have to be afraid. Suit yourself, she said, surprising me. She pulled a slip of paper from her purse and shoved it into my hand. My dorm and cell number. Call me when you're settled. I took it without a word. She stared at me for a second, then reached out and straightened my collar. Don't even think about avoiding me, Leo. You know what will happen. With that, she turned and walked away, the click of her heels echoing on the pavement. Watching her go, I noticed for the first time that her shoulders seemed thinner, more fragile than I remembered. My dorm was a quad, and my 3 roommates had already arrived. They were friendly, helping me unpack and asking where I was from. I answered cautiously, afraid to reveal too much. For all I knew, Isabella had already planted spies. To my surprise, the next few weeks were quiet. Isabella seemed busy, only texting occasionally to ask if I'd eaten. I started joining clubs, making friends, and even working on a project with a girl from my political science class. The feeling was intoxicating, like a caged bird finally tasting flight. I began to relax, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally let me go. Then came the rainy Tuesday. I was in the library late with a few classmates. When we left, a downpour had started. A girl named Chloe offered to share her umbrella and walk me back to my dorm. We talked and laughed the whole way. She was bright and funny, with a smile that made dimples appear in her cheeks. As we reached my dorm building, she leaned in. You have something in your hair. Just as her fingers brushed my temple, a voice cut through the darkness, cold and sharp. How sweet. I froze. Isabella was standing under a lone streetlight, completely soaked. Rain dripped from her hair, and her white dress clung to her skin. Her eyes were fixed on Chloe's hand on my shoulder, her mouth twisted into a terrifying smile. Chloe looked at me, confused. Is this a friend of yours? My sister, I managed to say. Isabella stepped forward, rain sliding down her pale face. Hello, I'm Isabella. She extended a hand. Thank you for taking care of my little brother. Chloe politely shook her hand, then said to me, well, I'll see you tomorrow. See you, I replied, feeling Isabella's nails dig into my arm. The moment Chloe was gone, Isabella dragged me behind the dorm building and slammed me against the brick wall. Her strength was shocking. Getting pretty popular, aren't we? She hissed, her voice shaking with rage. I'll leave you alone for a few weeks, and you're already hooking up with someone? We're just classmates. I protested. She let out a cold laugh and pulled a stack of photos from her bag, shoving them in my face. There were pictures of me from the past month, in the dining hall, in the library, on the quad. Every photo had the time and date meticulously noted on the back. My blood ran cold. You've been following me? Of course, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Did you really think I'd let you run free? She caressed my cheek, her fingers as cold as ice. Especially that one. Chloe, stay away from her. I shoved her hand away. You're insane. This is my life. You have no right. Her expression turned vicious. She grabbed a fistful of my hair, forcing my head back. 12 years, and you still don't get it? Everything about you is mine. Her voice was a low snarl. If I see you with that girl again, I'll make sure she doesn't last a semester at this school. And you know I can do it. I knew she could. Chloe was on a scholarship. If Isabella called her well-connected parents. Fine, I choked out. I'll stay away from her. She released me, her smile returning. She pulled a small, folded umbrella from her drenched purse and handed it to me. Good boy. Now go on, don't catch a cold. I took the umbrella numbly and watched her walk back into the rain. As she passed under the streetlight, she glanced back. By the way, come to my dorm for lunch tomorrow. I'm making you something special. In that moment, I understood. My college life, my supposed freedom, was just another cage, and she was the warden. The next day, I had to make excuses to avoid Chloe and my other new friends. Their hurt and confused looks were like daggers in my chest, but I had no choice. At noon, I went to Isabella's dorm. Her roommate was out. A perfectly arranged lunchbox sat on her desk. Isabella, dressed in sweatpants and a soft hoodie, looked almost domestic. Try it, she said, holding a piece of lemon chicken to my lips. I learned how to make it just for you. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. She watched me, a satisfied look on her face. You know, she said suddenly, it's nice like this. Just the two of us. She wiped a grain of rice from the corner of my mouth. After we graduate, we'll get married. I choked, coughing violently. Married? Was she out of her mind? What, you don't want to? Her eyes turned cold. We're siblings, I stammered. She laughed. We're not related by blood. She leaned so close I could smell her perfume. Have you ever, in your entire life, seen me care about any other boy the way I care about you? The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Her obsession wasn't just about control. It was something else entirely. I have to get a class, I said, scrambling to my feet. She didn't stop me. Just as I reached the door, she called out, remember what I said, darling. After that, her control became absolute. I had to eat with her 3 times a week, text her my location at all times, and even run my course selections by her. I was a fly caught in a spider's web, and every struggle only tangled me further. During my junior year, I made one last desperate attempt at freedom. I secretly applied for a semester abroad program in Taiwan. I told no one, filling out the application on a friend's computer. My interview went well, and I was accepted. If I could just hold on for one more month, I'd have a few months of peace. 2 weeks before my departure date, I received an anonymous email. The attachment was a single photo, me, standing nervously outside the interview room. The body of the email contained only 5 words. You can't run forever. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold the mouse. She knew. She always knew. That night, my phone rang. It was Isabella. I took a deep breath and answered. I hear the beef noodle soup in Taipei is amazing, she chirped, her voice light and cheerful. Make sure you bring me back some pineapple cakes. My world shattered. All my desperate struggles, my secret plans. To her, they were just an amusing little game. After graduation, she took over her family's company. My semester in Taiwan felt like a fever dream. Isabella still texted constantly, but the Pacific Ocean between us blunted her control. For a few months, I could breathe again. When I returned to I was more cautious than ever. In our final year, I buried myself in my studies, hoping to land a job as far away from her as possible. Isabella, sensing my plan, began talking more and more about her family's company, Vance Sterling. Dad says he's putting me in charge of West Coast operations after graduation, she mentioned casually over dinner one night. Since you're looking for an internship, you should come work for me. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I want to find my own job. Isabella set down her chopsticks, her eyes hardening. Why? Is my family's company not good enough for you? No, it's not that. I avoided her gaze. I just want to make it on my own merits. Merits? She scoffed. Do you really think you would have survived the last 4 years without me? She started ticking off points on her fingers. That scholarship you got freshman year? I pulled some strings. The roommate who was bullying you sophomore year? Why do you think he suddenly transferred? And that class you were about to fail last year? I stared at her in shock. That was all you? Of course, she said with a triumphant smile. Everything you have, I gave to you. So don't even think about running away. On graduation day, Isabella stood with the families, dressed in a sharp business suit, beaming as people congratulated her. When I walked across the stage to get my diploma, I saw her recording me with her phone, her lips silently forming 2 words. I didn't need to hear them to know what they were. Mine. After the ceremony, She dragged me over to her parents. Mr. Vance clapped me on the shoulder. Bella has it all arranged. You'll start at the company on Monday. I tried to refuse. Sir, I've actually received a few offers. What future is there in those little startups? He waved his hand dismissively. You come work for family. The sky's the limit. Behind her father's back, Isabella mouthed the words, don't piss me off. And so, I was forced into Vance Sterling. My first day, HR led me directly to the executive floor. Isabella was already seated in a sprawling corner office, a plaque for vice president gleaming on her desk. Your desk is right here, she said, pointing to a small cubicle just outside her glass-walled office. I want you where I can see you. From my new desk, I was in her direct line of sight. On it was a thick binder detailing my work schedule for the next 3 months. It was planned down to the minute, including mandated lunch times and bathroom breaks. There's almost no personal time. What is this? I asked, flipping through the pages. Isabella came up behind me, her fingers tracing the back of my neck. I like a well-organized life, she whispered, her breath warm on my ear. Especially when it comes to you. The first few weeks were hell. Isabella assigned me triple the workload of anyone else, and always the most difficult, high-stakes projects. I worked late every night, and the slightest mistake would earn me a public humiliation. Is this your proposal? A middle schooler could do better, she shouted in a meeting, throwing my report on the floor in front of a dozen colleagues. As I bent to pick it up, I heard the click of her heels approach. She leaned down and whispered, for my ears only, my office. Tonight. You're redoing it. That night, after everyone else had gone home, we were alone. Isabella locked her office door, drew the blinds, and perched on the edge of her desk, watching me work. Do you know why I give you such impossible tasks? She asked, crossing her legs. The light glinted off her sheer black stockings. I kept my eyes on the computer screen. To torture me. She laughed softly and used the toe of her designer heel to tilt my chin up. Wrong. It's to make you need me. Her eyes glittered. I'm the only one who can save you. Understand? She then took my half-finished proposal and, with a few swift keystrokes, restructured the entire thing. Follow this outline. The client will love it tomorrow. She was right. The proposal was a resounding success. My colleagues' attitudes shifted. I heard them whispering, he must be getting special treatment from a boss. This became our routine. She'd set me up to fail spectacularly, then swoop in to rescue me. Slowly, insidiously, a narrative formed in the office. I was an incompetent kiss-up who only had his job because of his relationship with the boss. Worse, I started to believe it. Whenever I hit a wall, my first thought wasn't how to solve it, but how Isabella would. Just as she'd planned, I was becoming completely dependent on her. The day my probation period ended, she took me to a Michelin-starred restaurant. She ordered a bottle of expensive red wine and poured me a glass. Congratulations on officially joining the Vance Sterling family, she said, raising her glass. From now on, you're really mine. Fortified by the wine, I finally asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why? Why me? Isabella swirled the wine in her glass, her eyes distant. Do you remember the day we first met? You were wearing those little blue overalls, standing in our driveway, too shy to even look up. Her voice softened. I thought he's so cute. I wish he could be mine forever. So you bullied me? That wasn't bullying, she smiled. That was marking my territory, like a cat leaving its scent. She grabbed my hand across the table. You're covered in my scent, Leo. You'll never wash it off. I got blackout drunk that night. Isabella drove me home. When I woke up the next morning, I was in an unfamiliar bed. Isabella was in the kitchen, making pancakes. Where am I? I asked, my head pounding. My place, she said, bringing a plate over, which is now our place. I had your things moved over this morning. I looked toward the corner and saw my suitcase and computer bag. She sat on the edge of the bed, gently stroking my hair. Don't worry. I called you in sick for the morning. We can go shopping for some essentials this afternoon. You really need some new clothes. Her tone was so casual, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. I was a fly, finally and completely caught in the spider's web, with no energy left to struggle. My life was no longer my own. She chose my clothes, my food, my friends. At work, she promoted me to special assistant to the VP under the guise of executive mentorship. Ms. Vance is so good to you, the new secretary gushed. She really takes you under her wing. Only I knew this mentorship was just another form of imprisonment. She was systematically erasing my independence, turning me into an extension of herself. At the annual company holiday party, Isabella, flushed with champagne, made an announcement. I have some wonderful news, she said, her arm wrapped around my shoulders. Starting next year, my fiancé will be taking over as the head of the marketing department. She beamed at me. Let's all give him our support. The room erupted in applause. I stood frozen, the word echoing in my ears. Fiancé? Since when? When we sat down, I hissed at her. What was that all about? She leaned in, her breath smelling of champagne and victory. Exactly what it sounded like. She pulled a small velvet box from her purse. I was going to give this to you later. Inside was a simple, elegant men's diamond ring. Under the table, she took my hand and slid it onto my ring finger. It was a perfect fit. Do you like it? I shot to my feet, drawing stares. Isabella stood up with me, her expression one of perfect concern. Darling, are you not feeling well? Trapped by the crowd's attention, I had to play along. Just a little dizzy. Then let's get you home, she said, supporting me with a proprietary arm. The moment we were outside in the cool night air, my head cleared. I pulled the ring off and tried to give it back. This isn't funny, Isabella. Her face went cold. She grabbed my wrist, her grip like a vice. You think this is a joke? Her voice trembled with fury. I've waited 18 years for this. You think I'm going to let you ruin it? I had never seen her like this. Her eyes were wild, on the verge of tears or murder. I instinctively tried to back away, but she pulled me into a fierce embrace. Listen to me, she whispered against my ear. We're getting engaged next month and married next year. If you refuse, her nails dug into my arm. I'll make sure everyone in this city knows exactly how you got your position at my company. She could do it. All the rumors, the special treatment, it was all a calculated setup for this very moment. If I fought her now, I'd be branded a pathetic gigolo. Give me some time, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She let go, her composure instantly restored. Of course, darling, she said, tenderly straightening my tie. I have all the time in the world. That night, I stood on the balcony of her high-rise apartment, looking out at the city lights, and seriously considered what it would take to disappear. But I knew, with a sickening certainty, that with her family's resources, she would find me anywhere on Earth. Unless I vanished completely. She was always there, right in front of me. The engagement announcement spread through the company like wildfire. The next day, everyone I passed gave me a knowing, sleazy smile. Some of the senior managers started calling me the Prince Consort. Isabella seemed to revel in it, linking her arm through mine as she toured the departments, showing off her prize. Wipe that look off your face, she said once we were back in her office, pinching my cheek. Do you have any idea how many men would kill to marry into the Vance family? I brushed her hand away. I don't want it. Her smile vanished. She walked to the window and stood with her back to me. The marketing department just hired a new assistant. Chloe, right? She was in your year at UCLA, wasn't she? My stomach dropped. I remembered Chloe, the sweet girl from my junior year abroad program, but we were just casual acquaintances. For Isabella to bring her up now could not be a coincidence. I don't know her, I lied. Isabella turned around, holding her phone. Then why did she text you yesterday, asking if the company was still hiring? The blood drained from my face. I remembered leaving my phone on my desk last week. Isabella had kindly brought it home to me. You went through my phone? What belongs to my fiancé belongs to me, she said dismissively, her thumb swiping across the screen. Don't worry, I already replied for you. She turned the screen toward me. See? So helpful. The screen showed my text conversation with Chloe. The last message sent from my phone read, We're hiring a marketing coordinator. Come in for an interview tomorrow at 10 a.m. Just tell them I sent you. I lunged for the phone. She dodged me neatly and slipped it into her pocket. Don't be difficult. The show is just getting started. She pressed a button on her desk phone. Jessica, please schedule an emergency marketing meeting for 2 o'clock this afternoon. The meeting was a masterclass in psychological torture. Isabella had Chloe present her initial findings first, then proceeded to tear her apart in front of the entire department. This market analysis is fundamentally flawed, Isabella said, slamming the report on the table. The basic data is wrong. How did you even pass your interview? Chloe's face turned white. Her eyes darted to me, pleading for help. I opened my mouth to speak, but Isabella cut me off with an icy glare. Does the special assistant have something to add? Are you going to defend her? The entire room turned to stare at me. The air was thick with unspoken accusations. I clenched my fists under the table and looked down, defeated. After the meeting, Chloe cornered me in the break room. Leo, what did I do to upset Ms. Vance? It's not you, I said, my voice heavy with guilt. She's just what? Isabella's voice came from the doorway. She stood there, holding a mug of coffee, talking about me behind my back. Chloe shook her head frantically. No, Ms. Vance, I was just hitting on my fiancé. Isabella walked in and set her mug down with a loud crack. Pack your things and go to HR. You're fired. Isabella. I finally snapped. That's enough. She raised an eyebrow. Yelling at your fiancé? For a girl you just met. She turned back to Chloe. Now do you see why you're being fired? After Chloe ran out crying, Isabella locked the break room door. She backed me against the refrigerator, her eyes blazing. Remember this, Leo, she said, her hand stroking my cheek. The more you care about someone, the more they will suffer. That night, Isabella acted as if nothing had happened, cheerfully discussing catering options for our engagement party. I sat on the sofa in silence. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a block number, from Chloe. Leo, I get it. Be careful. She went through my phone today and deleted the contact info for every guy I work with. Staring at the message, I realized a terrifying truth. Isabella's pathological control was escalating. If she was now monitoring and punishing casual acquaintances, what about my actual friends? The next morning, I discovered half the contacts on my phone were gone. Isabella sat at the breakfast table, calmly buttering a piece of toast. Just did a little spring cleaning for you, she said without looking up. Got rid of some unnecessary connections. I stormed over to her. What gives you the right? The right of being your future wife, she said, taking a delicate bite. Those people weren't helping your career. Why keep them around? They were my friends. Friends. She laughed coldly. That girl Chloe from UCLA? She transferred out. Your high school basketball buddy, Josh? His family's business suddenly went bankrupt. And in middle school, I stared at her, horrified. You did all of that. She didn't deny it. She stood, straightened her blazer, and said, I'm heading to the office. The suit fitting is at 3. Don't be late. After the door closed behind her, I sank into a chair, feeling suffocated. Isabella hadn't just taken over my present. She had retroactively poisoned my past. For 18 years, she had been weaving an invisible net, and I was caught fast, unable to move. The suit fitting was agony. Isabella picked out a white tuxedo for me and made me try on a dozen different bow ties. The shop assistants gushed about what a handsome couple we made, oblivious to the despair in my eyes. Smile, Isabella commanded in a low voice, her fingers digging into my waist. Tonight, I'll pay a visit to your old college roommate. She knew all my weak spots. My senior year roommate, AJ, came from a poor family and was now working as an accountant at a small firm. It would be trivially easy for the Vance to destroy his career. I forced a smile. The assistants cooed. Isabella, satisfied, kissed my cheek. We'll take this one, she said to the tailor, pointing to the most expensive option. On the way home, Isabella got a call and had to rush off to a last-minute client meeting. She dropped me at the apartment building. Go on up and eat. Don't wait for me. It was my first moment alone in weeks. I immediately called AJ to warn him. But when he answered, I didn't know what to say. What's up, man? AJ asked, sensing my hesitation. Trouble in paradise with the Ice Queen. AJ, how's work? I asked tentatively. It's great, actually. Boss said I'm up for promotion. He laughed. I think I have you to thank. We just landed a big contract with a partner of Vance Sterling. The phone felt slick in my sweating palm. She had already gotten to him. She had turned my best friend into another hostage. After I hung up, I walked aimlessly, ending up at a downtown bar. I ordered a whiskey, then another. The alcohol was a welcome anesthetic. Drinking alone, a woman's voice asked. I looked up to see a stranger in a red dress. She was attractive, maybe in her late 20s, with bright, intelligent eyes. Mind if I join you? She asked. I shook my head. She introduced herself as Anna, a curator at a nearby art gallery. We fell into an easy conversation. She was funny and sharp, and for a little while I forgot my misery. You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders, Anna said gently after my 4th drink. Want to talk about it? The whiskey had loosened my tongue. I was about to unload everything when the bar door swung open. Isabella stood there, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. I sobered up instantly. Anna followed my gaze. A friend, my fiancé, I said, the word tasting like ash. Isabella was already at our table. She was still in her power suit, clearly having come straight from her meeting. Her eyes flickered over Anna with a flash of cold fury. Darling, her voice was sickeningly sweet. Why weren't you answering my calls? I glanced at my phone. A dozen missed calls. Isabella slid into the booth between me and Anna, wrapping a possessive arm around my waist. And who is this? Anna, sensing the toxic atmosphere, wisely stood up. I should get going. It was nice meeting you. The second she was gone, Isabella's smile vanished. She hauled me out of the bar and shoved me in her car. Were you following me? I slurred. She started the engine. I put a tracker on your phone. She said it as if she were talking about the weather. Who was that woman? Just someone from the bar. We were just talking. Isabella slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt. She turned and grabbed my chin. Talking? I watched you for 10 minutes. You were smiling. Her nails dug into my skin. Am I not enough for you? I slapped her hand away. You're crazy. We were just talking. Talking? She laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Mr. Reynolds, I hear you have a new curator at your gallery named Anna. As of tomorrow, I don't want to see her name associated with the art world ever again. I'll lunge for the phone, but it was too late. She hung up and looked at me, a triumphant glint in her eyes. Do you understand now? Everything about you is mine. Your friends, your colleagues, even the strangers you meet in a bar. I slumped back in my seat, utterly defeated. She was right. She had built an invisible wall around me, and anyone who tried to get close would be destroyed. Back at the apartment, she pushed me toward the bathroom. Go wash the smell of cheap perfume and whiskey off of you. I stood under the shower, letting the cold water cascade over me. 18 years. From the moment we met, she had been consuming my life, piece by piece. Now there was nothing left. The bathroom door opened. Isabella, now in a silk nightgown, stepped inside. She turned off the water and wrapped a towel around me. You'll catch a cold. Her touch was so gentle, as if the monster from 10 minutes ago had never existed. I looked at her, so close, so beautiful, and felt a profound wave of exhaustion. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was my fate. After years of fighting, I was finally trapped. Until the day I finally broke her. The week before the engagement party, the company landed a massive project. Isabella was buried in work, which finally gave me a sliver of breathing room. That afternoon, I told my secretary I had a client meeting and slipped out of the office, heading straight for an internet cafe in a rundown strip mall on the outskirts of the city. It was one of the few places that didn't require an ID to use a computer. I found a terminal in the darkest corner, created a new anonymous email, and typed "how to escape a controlling partner" into the search bar. The psychological profiles that appeared made my blood run cold. Isabella's behavior ticked every single box for pathological possessiveness. My hands shaking, I found a legal aid website and jotted down the contact information for a few lawyers. Just as I was about to log off, a hand clapped down on my shoulder. I nearly jumped out of my skin. A young guy in a baseball cap was looking down at me. Dude, your girlfriend's outside looking for you. My heart stopped. Through the grimy front window of the cafe, I saw her. Isabella, leaning against her car, casually twirling my company ID badge, which I'd left on my desk, around her finger. Her expression was placid as I walked out. She even smiled at me. Get in the car, fiancé. The silence in the car was suffocating. Isabella turned on the stereo, and a soft piano melody filled the space. She drove with effortless grace, her fingers tapping the rhythm on the steering wheel. I'm curious, she said when we stopped at a red light. What's so special about that particular internet cafe? I stared out the window, saying nothing. She let out a soft laugh and pulled a manila folder from the glove compartment, tossing it into my lap. Or were you there to see him? The folder was filled with printouts. It was a complete dossier on the cafe's owner, his home address, his kids' schools, even his recent bank statements. The last page was a photo of him with my college roommate, AJ. On the back, in Isabella's handwriting, was a single word: friends. Your spy on all my friends. My voice shook with rage. She didn't answer. She pulled into our underground garage, killed the engine, and turned to me. We'll talk upstairs. The moment the apartment door clicked shut, she slapped me across the face. The force sent me stumbling back against the wall. You think I don't know what you're planning? She shrieked, grabbing the front of my shirt. Calling lawyers? Try to run. Her eyes were bloodshot, her breathing ragged. 18 years, and you still haven't learned. I shoved her away. Enough. I'm not your toy. Isabella suddenly laughed, a sound that chilled me to the bone. She calmly took off her jacket and pulled a small flash drive from her purse. Do you know what this is? I watched her warily. It's proof that your father has been embezzling money from his company, she said, tossing the flash drive lightly in her hand. Enough to put him in prison for a decade. My world imploded. You framed him, I rasped. Isabella tilted her head, a look of mock innocence on her face. Does it matter? What matters is if you dare to call off this engagement or even think about running away again. She waggled the flash drive. What do you think will happen? I'll lunge for it. But she was ready for me. In a struggle, I lost my balance and pushed her. She stumbled backward, her hip hitting the corner of the glass coffee table. She cried out, and when she straightened up, a trickle of blood was running down her forehead. Time seemed to stop. Isabella touched the blood, her expression shifting from shock to something wild and unhinged. Good, she whispered. You finally learned to fight back. In the next second, before I could process what was happening, she grabbed a heavy vase from the table and smashed it against her own arm. Shards of glass sliced through her skin, and a deep, ugly gash opened up. As I stared in horror, She pulled out her phone and dialed. Her voice was a pathetic, broken sob. "Dad, you have to come to the hospital. Leo. He hit me." What happened next was a blur. I was forcibly removed from the apartment by building security while Isabella was whisked away in an ambulance. The next day, my father called, his voice weary and broken. "Son, what did you do?" "The Vances are pulling all their investments. The board is auditing the books." I could. "Dad, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," he cut me off. "Get to the hospital, get on your knees, and beg Isabella to forgive you. Our family is ruined if you don't." At the hospital, Mr. Vance blocked my path to the VIP suite, his face a mask of cold fury. "Isabella has never been hurt like this in her life." He handed me a document. "Sign this, or your father will be arrested tomorrow morning." It was a prenuptial agreement. The terms were barbaric. All marital assets would belong to Isabella. If I initiated a divorce, I would owe her an astronomical sum. It even specified the number of times per year I was allowed to see my own family. "This is a slave contract," I said, my hands trembling. Mr. Vance sneered. "Sign it or don't. It's your choice." Through the window in the door, I could see Isabella. She was propped up in bed, a bandage on her forehead, casually flipping through a magazine. She looked up, saw me, and a triumphant smile spread across her face. She mouthed a single word: "You lose." And she was right. I had lost. Not just my freedom, but my entire family's future. I took the pen and signed my life away. Mr. Vance grunted in satisfaction and took the papers. "Go on in. She's waiting for you." I pushed the door open. Isabella patted the empty space on the bed next to her. "Come here." I walked over like a robot. She took my hand and placed it on her bandaged arm. "Does it hurt?" she asked softly. "When you pushed me, did you feel even a little bit of pain?" I pulled my hand back. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I love you," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I've known you were mine since I was 5. She reached up and stroked my face. "And now, finally, no one can ever separate us." That night, against doctor's orders, Isabella checked herself out of the hospital. Back at the apartment, she produced a delicate silver chain with a small, ornate lock at the end. "A gift," she said with a smile. "I have one, too." Before I could react, she fastened the chain around my wrist. The lock clicked shut. She held up her own wrist, where a matching bracelet dangled a tiny silver key. "Don't ever think about taking it off." I stared at the chain on my wrist and understood. Isabella's sickness would never be cured. If I wanted to protect my family, to protect the innocent people she used as pawns, there was only one way out. I had to disappear, not run, disappear, so that even she could never find me. That night, we slept together. The chain was the last straw. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the soft, even sound of Isabella's breathing, a desperate, insane plan began to form in my mind. The next morning, she got up early for work. She stood in front of the mirror in a silk robe, applying her makeup. The tiny key on her wrist glinted with every movement. "I have a big meeting today, so I can't have lunch with you," she said, coming over to kiss my forehead. "I left a sandwich for you in the fridge." I nodded obediently and watched her leave. The moment the door clicked shut, I sprang into action. From under the bed, I pulled out a burner phone I'd managed to buy at the hospital gift shop. My hand shook as I dialed AJ's number. "I need your help." 2 hours later, I met him in a dingy coffee shop across town. As I told him everything, his face grew more and more grim. "Are you sure about this, Leo? The Vance family has connections everywhere." "I don't have a choice," I said, showing him the chain on my wrist. "If I don't get out now, I'm going to lose my mind." AJ was silent for a long moment, then he finally nodded. "I have a cousin who works in logistics. He can get you a fake passport and a spot on a cargo ship. But you'll have to leave the country. Far away." The plan was set for the following Wednesday. Isabella had a 3-day business trip to New York. It was the window I needed. On my way home, I stopped and bought a bottle of expensive red wine. I had to get Isabella to lower her guard, and alcohol was the best way I knew how. She was surprised when she got home and saw the candlelit dinner. "What's the special occasion?" "I've been thinking," I said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. "If I can't escape, I might as well accept it." A bright, genuine smile lit up her face. She took the glass and clinked it against mine. "You've finally come to your senses." She drank a lot that night, her cheeks flushing pink, her eyes growing hazy. When I helped her to the bedroom, she wrapped her arms around my neck. "Hold me," she whispered. I froze. Despite being forced to live with her, we had never been intimate. "You don't want to?" Her eyes darkened. "Don't forget the contract you signed." I knew what she was implying. If I refused now, all my careful acting would be for nothing. Under the influence of the wine, everything became a blur. I remember the heat of her skin, her whispers of "you're mine forever" against my ear, and the cold, metallic feel of the chain on my wrist. When I woke the next morning, she was already gone. A note sat on the nightstand. "Darling, last night was incredible. Don't forget to eat breakfast. Your fiancé." I stumbled into the shower and scrubbed my skin raw, but I couldn't wash away the feeling of being utterly and completely violated. In the mirror, my eyes were bloodshot. The chain on my wrist seemed to mock me. I had 5 days until the plan. I had to hold it together. For the next few days, I was the perfect, docile partner. I made her breakfast, asked about her day, even went with her to pick out wedding bands. Isabella was both thrilled and suspicious of my transformation. I could feel her watching me, testing me. "So obedient all of a sudden," she said over dinner one night, tapping my chin. "You're not planning something, are you?" I met her gaze directly. I just realized, if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, we might as well not make each other miserable. She smiled, a chillingly beautiful expression. "You're lying," she said, "but it doesn't matter." She kissed my fingers. "You can't escape." Wednesday finally arrived. Isabella left for the airport early, but not before checking that my chain was secure. "Text me your location 3 times a day," she commanded, "or I'll be on the next flight back." I promised I would. The moment her car was out of sight, I moved. AJ's cousin delivered the fake passport and a ticket for a freighter bound for the Philippines. Using a pair of bolt cutters I'd hidden, I snapped the chain. I took only the burner phone and a small wad of cash. "The Vance will have people everywhere," AJ said, his face etched with worry. "Are you sure about this?" "The more dangerous the place, the safer I'll be," I said, stuffing a change of clothes into a backpack. "She'll never think to look for me there." Before I left, I sent Isabella one last text. "I'm sorry. I have to go. Don't look for me." Then I shut off the phone, snapped the SIM card in half, and flushed it down the toilet. On the way to the docks, I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting her men to appear. But the journey was smooth. I boarded the cargo ship without a problem. Standing on the deck, watching the coastline recede into the haze, I took a deep, shuddering breath. I was finally free, but I had underestimated the depths of her obsession. 3 days later, as the ship docked in Manila, it was suddenly swarmed by armed police. I thought it was a random inspection and hid in the cargo hold. I stayed there, silent, until I heard a familiar sound, the sharp click of high heels on the metal deck, growing closer and closer like a death knell. "Come on out, darling," Isabella's voice called from outside the hold. "The game is over." I huddled behind a shipping container, sweat pouring down my back. It wasn't possible. How could she have found me? The cargo door was thrown open, flooding the space with blinding sunlight. Isabella stood silhouetted against it, flanked by several local officers. In her hand, she held my fake passport. Her face was a mask of pure triumph. "Did you really think a new name would be enough to get away from me?" She stepped into the hold, her heels echoing on the metal floor. "Don't you remember, Leo? Everything you have, I gave to you." She walked over and knelt in front of me, gently wiping a smudge of dirt from my cheek. "Do you know what upset me the most?" Her voice was terrifyingly soft. "The fact that you ran away the morning after we finally made love." She took my left hand. It was only then that I saw it. A simple gold band on my ring finger. It matched the one on her own. "We're married now," Isabella said, smiling. "The Philippines recognizes common law marriage after consummation." Surprise. I was trapped in a nightmare. The sex, the escape, it had all been a calculated trap to legally bind me to her. "You're a monster," I whispered. Isabella didn't seem to mind. She pulled another document from her purse. "And speaking of good news," she said sweetly, "you're going to be a father." She handed me a sonogram photo, a tiny, grainy image of an embryo. "I found out 2 weeks ago," she said, her hand resting on her flat stomach. The timing was just perfect. The world spun out of control. I collapsed onto the floor, staring up at her smiling face, and understood a final, devastating truth. I could never escape her. Not now. Not ever. Because now, my own blood was flowing through her veins. I had no choice but to marry her. The holding cell in the Manila police station smelled of mold and stale sweat. I sat on a metal bench, the handcuffs on my wrists cold and heavy. Isabella sat across from me, her legs crossed elegantly, as if we were in a high-end cafe. "Have you made your decision?" she asked, pushing a document across the table. "Sign this, and we can fly home today." It was a marriage affirmation agreement. It stated that I acknowledged our common law marriage in the Philippines and agreed to formally register it back in the States. "And if I don't sign?" I asked, looking up. Isabella smiled and gave a subtle nod to the guard standing nearby. The officer walked over and said in broken English, "You enter country on false passport." In Philippines, this is 5 years in prison. 5 years, Isabella added softly. That's long enough for our child to learn to call me mommy. My hand trembled. This wasn't a choice. It was an ultimatum. Sign, and be her prisoner forever. Refuse, and rot in a foreign jail. Why? My voice was a raw whisper. Why go to all this trouble? Her expression softened for a moment. She reached out and caressed my face, as if I were a priceless treasure. Because I love you, Leo. I've known you were mine since we were 5. She'd said the words 1,000 times, but now they sounded more like a curse than a confession. I pulled away. This isn't love. It's a sickness. Call it what you want. Her face hardened again. Sign the paper, or go to prison. Choose. I picked up the pen. The tip tore at the paper as I scrawled my name, signing away the last shred of my soul. The journey home was a blur. Isabella's connections made my illegal entry problem disappear, officially logged as a lost passport incident. On the plane, she held my hand the entire time, her grip tight, as if she feared I might leap from the emergency exit. Wipe that look off your face, she whispered in my ear. Countless men would kill to be in your position. I stared out the window at the endless expanse of clouds and said nothing. Back home, Isabella immediately dove into wedding planning. She booked the venue, chose the dress, and finalized the guest list. She even wrote my vows. My only job was to be the compliant groom in her grand production. Smile, she commanded at the final dress fitting, her fingers digging into my waist. The wedding is tomorrow. Don't you dare ruin it with that miserable face. In the mirror, we were the perfect couple. She, in a bespoke gown, looked like a fairy tale princess. I, in a tailored black tuxedo, wore a smile that felt like a mask of agony. The shop staff swooned, blind to the desperation in my eyes. The wedding was an obscene display of wealth. The Vances had booked the most expensive hotel in the city. The guest list a who's who of business and political elites. I moved through the day like a marionette, kissing my bride for the cheering crowd. Now you're mine forever, she whispered as she slid the ring on my finger. Legally, financially, and through her child. A triple lock cage. The reception dragged on late into the night. After the last guest had departed, Isabella led me to the penthouse honeymoon suite. She poured 2 glasses of champagne. To us, husband. I took the glass but didn't drink. She didn't care. She downed hers in one gulp, then reached for my tie. We shouldn't waste the night. I'm tired, I said, pushing her hand away. Her smile froze. She slammed her glass down and ripped my shirt open, buttons scattering across the floor. Don't play the saint with me, she hissed, her voice shaking with rage. You seem to enjoy yourself just fine that night in Manila. I grabbed her wrists. I was drunk. So what? She wrenched her hands free and pointed at her stomach. The baby is real. This marriage is real. You are never, ever getting away from me. She lunged at me, her kiss bruising and punitive. I stood there passively, my mind numb, until a single thought pierced the fog. If I push her away, will I hurt the baby? The thought terrified me. Somewhere, deep inside, I had already started to care about that unborn child. When I woke up the next morning, Isabella was already dressed, on the phone on the balcony. In the morning light, her profile was breathtakingly beautiful. She saw I was awake, ended her call, and came inside. Dad bought us a house. We're going to see it today. The house was a 3-story modern mansion with a pool and a sprawling garden in the city's most exclusive gated community. Isabella excitedly gave me a tour, stopping at the last room. This will be the nursery, she said, taking my hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. Our child will grow up here. I snatched my hand back as if I'd been burned. The action ignited her fury. Her eyes went cold. What? You don't want this child? Too late, she sneered. He's already legally registered as your heir. If you try to divorce me, not only will you pay a fortune in alimony, but you'll also lose all parental rights. You'll never see him again. Of course, the child wasn't just a chain, it was a new form of leverage. I turned to leave, but she wrapped her arms around me from behind. Don't be like this, her voice softened. Please, just try to accept this. I'll be a good wife. I'll be a good mother. I didn't answer. Her embrace was warm, but I knew that beneath the softness lay 18 years of relentless, suffocating control. After we moved in, her surveillance intensified. She installed tracking software on my phone, demanded video check-ins 3 times a day, and even had my new colleagues reporting on my every move. As her pregnancy progressed, her moods became volatile. The smallest thing could trigger a screaming fit, followed by tearful apologies she blamed on hormones. We had an ultrasound today. The doctor said the baby is very healthy, she announced at dinner one night. It's a boy. My chopsticks paused. How do you know? They're not supposed to tell you the gender. I have my ways, she said with a smug smile. The Vance heir needs to be properly prepared for. That night, I dreamed of a small, faceless boy crying out, "Daddy." I woke with a start to find Isabella sitting on the edge of the bed, just watching me. "Bad dream?" she asked softly. In the moonlight, her eyes gleamed. I realized with a jolt of terror that once this child was born, he would become her newest and most powerful weapon. I would be trapped in this gilded cage forever. The next day, I was walking past a law firm and on a strange impulse went inside. A kind, middle-aged lawyer listened to my story, then shook his head sadly. "Based on what you've told me, Mr. Sterling, a divorce is nearly impossible. You signed the prenup, and she's carrying your child." He sighed. "Your only chance would be to prove gross misconduct or mental incompetence." Mental incompetence. The words echoed in my head. Isabella's behavior was clearly abnormal, but proving it in a court of law felt impossible. On my way home, my phone rang. It was Isabella. Her voice was ice. "Were you just now?" My heart sank. "Just grabbing a file from the office." "Really?" she sneered. "Because your phone's GPS shows you were at a law firm for the last 40 minutes. The line went dead. 10 minutes later, her car screeched to a halt beside me. She rolled down the window, her eyes so full of rage I took a step back. "Get in." The silence in the car was heavy and threatening. She drove erratically, speeding through the streets. At a red light, she slammed on the brakes and turned to me, her voice trembling. "Lawyers? You want a divorce? That's enough." I finally exploded. "What will it take for you to just let me go?" Isabella stared at me, stunned into silence. The light turned green, and cars behind us started honking. She put the car in gear, her voice suddenly terrifyingly calm. "My death," she said. Her words were like a bucket of ice water. Looking at her serene profile, I understood a final, horrifying truth. Her obsession ran so deep, she would rather see us both destroyed than ever let me go. Back at the house, she went straight to the bathroom. I sat on the sofa, listening to the shower run, my eyes fixed on the fruit knife sitting in a bowl on the coffee table. For a fleeting, insane moment, I considered it. She looked at me, a hint of triumph in her eyes. The fruit knife gleamed under the lamplight. I stared at it for a long time, the dark thoughts swirling in my mind, until the sound of the shower, turning off, snapped me back to reality. I was horrified at myself. I had actually been considering violence. Isabella walked out, toweling her hair, and frowned when she saw me zoned out on the sofa. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." I quickly looked away. She came and sat next to me, smelling of fresh soap and shampoo. Her damp hair brushed against my neck, cool and soft. "I was out of line today," she said, a rare apology. "It's the hormones." She took my hand and placed it on her gently rounded stomach. "For the baby's sake, can we please just be okay?" I could feel a faint, fluttery movement beneath my palm. The tangible presence of another life. In that moment, I knew with absolute clarity that whatever battles I had with Isabella, our child was innocent. "Okay," I nodded, my voice quiet. Isabella's face lit up, her eyes curving into crescents. She leaned in and kissed me, a kiss so tender it felt like it belonged to a different person. From that day on, something shifted. Isabella seemed to change. She stopped tracking my every move, giving me space. She stopped trying to force my compliance, and even started trying to cook, though the results were often disastrous. "Try it," she said one night, presenting a plate of what looked like charred rocks but was meant to be sweet and sour pork. I followed a YouTube tutorial. I took a bite, forcing myself to swallow the salty, burnt meat. "It's not bad." Her eyes widened like a child who had just gotten a gold star. "Really? I'll make it for you every day." Looking at her hopeful face, I felt a strange sense of dislocation. Was this woman in an apron, with a smudge of sauce on her cheek, really the same person who had tormented me for 18 years? As her due date approached, Isabella's temper mellowed completely. She devoured parenting books and pulled me into debates over baby names. On weekends, we went to baby stores, where she would agonize over the color of a bottle warmer like any other expectant mother. "Blue or yellow?" she asked, holding up 2 identical onesies. "I wonder which color he'll like more." "Just get both," I said. She looked at me, surprised. "Are you finally getting excited about the baby?" I didn't answer. But that night, I found myself secretly Googling newborn care tips and downloading a fetal development tracker. These small changes didn't escape her notice. One night before bed, she turned to me and asked, "Do you love him?" "Our son." I paused. Over the last few months, I had come to accept the reality of being a father, but the word love still felt too heavy, too complicated. "I don't know," I answered honestly. Isabella didn't get angry. She just squeezed my hand. "It's okay. We have time." 2 weeks before her due date, she went into labor. At the hospital, the doctor said there were complications and recommended an immediate C-section. I paced the waiting room for 2 agonizing hours. When a nurse finally came out carrying a crying bundle, my legs felt rooted to the floor. "A healthy baby boy," the nurse said, smiling. "Mom is doing great too." I hesitantly took the tiny, wrinkled creature into my arms. He was so small, so fragile. He immediately quieted, his dark, wet eyes looking right at me. In that instant, something inside my chest cracked open. When they wheeled Isabella out, she was pale but radiant. Seeing me holding our son, she smiled weakly. "Who does he look like?" "You," I said without thinking. It was true. His eyes were hers, dark and impossibly bright. In the hospital, Isabella was a different woman. She insisted on breastfeeding, even when the incision pain made her wince. The moment the baby cried, she was awake, patiently rocking him back to sleep. The proud, imperious Isabella Vance was now completely at the mercy of a 7-pound infant. "Look," she whispered one night, waking me gently. "He's smiling." I blinked sleepily and saw our son, nestled in his bassinet, grinning in his sleep. Isabella's face was filled with a tenderness I had never seen before. Moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating the two of them in a soft glow. It looked like a painting, and in that quiet moment, I finally understood what a family could be. The chaos of new parenthood consumed us when we got home. Changing diapers, midnight feedings, baths, the endless cycle of tasks left no room for our old battles. "Isabella," I asked one night as she was burping the baby, "why did you bully me all those years?" Her hand stilled. She was silent for a long time before she finally spoke. "Because when you're a kid, being mean to someone is how you show you like them." The answer was so absurdly childish that I almost laughed. She looked at me, a hint of triumph in her eyes. "See? You ended up being mine anyway, didn't you?" I didn't argue. I looked at our sleeping son, then at the proud, fragile woman before me, and I felt a strange sense of resignation. Perhaps this was just fate. 18 years of torment, obsession, and hatred had somehow, impossibly, morphed into this. Our relationship was too twisted to be defined by love or hate, but one thing was certain. This child bound us together forever. On the day of our son's 1-month celebration, Isabella threw a small party in the garden. She wore a light blue dress and moved through the crowd of friends and family. Our son cradled in her arms, her face glowing with happiness. "Congratulations, Mr. Vance said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Never thought you'd actually end up my son-in-law." I managed a wry smile. No, I hadn't thought so either. After the party, Isabella put the sleeping baby in his stroller and leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm exhausted. The setting sun cast a golden light on her face, her eyelashes making tiny shadows on her cheeks. On a strange impulse, I leaned down and kissed the top of her head. Isabella looked up at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "What was that for?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I just felt like it." Her face broke into a radiant smile. "You know," she said, her voice soft, "that's the first time you've ever kissed me first." "Was it?" I thought back. It seemed it was. For 18 years, every touch had been initiated by her, with me either enduring or resisting. "There will be more," I said. Isabella smiled, a smile so pure and unguarded it looked like it belonged to a different person. She rested her head back on my shoulder, and together, we watched the sun dip below the horizon, a gentle breeze stirring the air. Maybe this was the best possible ending. The beginning had been a nightmare, the journey a war, but perhaps we had finally found our own twisted version of peace. After all, we had a lifetime ahead of us.